we'll kick off, mindful of everyone's time. Hope everybody's had a great day, a good evening, and welcome to this evening's panel, which is a discussion focusing on pharmacy recruitment. So it's certainly a tough market out there at the moment in terms of attracting and retaining quality staff. So they are definitely at a premium. So this webinar is very timely. My name's Daniel Oyston, and I'm a marketer, mostly working with small and medium businesses. And some of you may recognise my voice as the host of the Guild's PBCN podcast. If you aren't a regular listener, then jump on, because it's got heaps of great guests and lots of topics that are really focused on sharing all sorts of things that will help your pharmacy business and career. But tonight we have a webinar, and so I'm going to move fairly quickly as there isn't a lot of spare time in the agenda. And we do need to get to our presenters quickly, because that is why we are here tonight, to hear from them. But we would love to hear from you as well. It's great for you to be involved in the session. It's definitely how you get most out of it. So please post your questions in the chat anytime. I'll be keeping an eye on them, and we'll pose them to the guests. Trust me, I've done loads of webinars and panel hostings, both live and virtual, in my time. And I can tell you that the guests really do love the interaction and getting questions from you. So please don't be shy. Just pop them in the chat at any time. You don't need to wait until the end of the presentation and then send them through. However, we are on a fairly tight time frame, and we do need to be respectful of people's time. So if you have a question, if there's lots of questions that come in and we can't get to it, I promise that I will get it to the presenters via email, and they can follow up and give you an answer from there. And of course, this session, as you probably noticed when you logged in, is being recorded, and we will make that available as soon as possible. So without further ado, let's welcome our first presenter, because as community health hubs, it's important for pharmacies to have the most effective recruitment strategies and practices in place so that they can attract and engage awesome talent. So there is more and more opportunity out there for job seekers at the moment. So they have a lot of power, a lot of leverage. And so it's imperative that you stand out from the crowd when they're looking for employment. So please welcome Heidi Dariz, who is the General Manager at Ravens Recruitment, who will talk to you about strategies that you can use to optimize your hiring process, which is, as I said, very timely, because it's right before the busiest retail period of the year kicks off. So welcome, and over to you, Heidi.
Okay, thanks, Daniel. So I'll just go and I'll share my screen here. Share, so, okay, fantastic. So just, how do I, sorry, I'm just, get that going. That one? Perfect. Sorry about that.
Excellent.
So thanks everyone for attending this evening. Tonight I'll be in particular discussing strategies for attracting employees to your pharmacy in particular. So we're going to have two parts. I've broken it up into two parts. So firstly, we're going to be looking at what employees actually want when they're considering a role. And we'll consider factors such as company culture, work environment, salary and benefits, as well as career progression and training. After this, we'll move on to your recruitment strategy. And how to ensure that every step of the process, from your job advertisement to the way you conduct the interview and present the job offer, are all guaranteeing that you attract the best talent for your business. And after this, at the end of the presentation, as Daniel said, we'll have time for some questions that you might have. So, okay, so if we begin by looking at what employees want when they're looking for a role. So I don't think it will come as a surprise to any of you that Australia is currently facing a massive skill shortage. So this is clearly evident within the pharmacy industry as well, with the number of vacant roles and the time taken to fill these at an all-time high. In such a market, the number one question we are asked by employers is how to attract staff to their business and to stand out as the candidate's first preference when applying for a role. Businesses need to consider how they can position themselves as an employer of choice. Ensuring your salary offering is competitive is only one part of the equation. Employees aren't just motivated by money. Flexible work environments, opportunities to learn and grow, and strong relationships between managers and teams should all factor into your strategy. Okay, so if we first look at the company culture and work environment, so having the right company culture in a workplace can make all the difference when it comes to making a position more attractive to potential employees. Pharmacists are increasingly searching for work-life balance and more flexibility in their careers. Whilst pharmacy can't really offer a work from home option as other industries can, people are looking for workplaces that provide flexibility so they can enjoy life outside of work. We're finding that pharmacists are no longer willing to accept working huge number of hours without a break. And for your pharmacy, this might mean considering flexible start and finish times, unpaid leave, or even flexi time. In addition to this, your company leadership will also play a huge role as company culture flows from the top of the organisation. Employees are looking for a nurturing environment where they can receive great mentoring, support and encouragement from the owner, and employees who are appreciative of their teams and show it are better at both then attracting and retaining staff down the track. Okay, salary and benefits. Everyone's talking about salaries at the moment within pharmacy. So obviously it's not the only thing that matters to employees when they're applying for a role, but obviously it's top of mind. If you want to hire skilled workers, you must be prepared to pay them what they're worth. So to determine if your salary is competitive, the best way to do this is to look at current industry averages. So Ravens Recruitment, you might know, we release an annual salary market report each year, and we've just released our 2022 version, which you can pick up for free on our website. It shows the actual salaries that were paid to pharmacists and support staff over the past 12 months. And then we break that down by position type and also by location via state and via metro and metropolitan and rural roles as well. So this is a really great tool for ensuring that your salary offering will be attractive to potential employees that are looking at your role. So in terms of other trends that we're also seeing in salary packages at the moment within pharmacy, the majority of pharmacy employees in regional areas are now offering paid accommodation as well as relocation expenses. So previously, say 3 or 4 years ago, most of our employees would offer relocation expenses, and this was sufficient. But with the huge number of regional roles available and sometimes a difficulty in finding accommodation in these locations, we're finding that employers are now having to source this to be attractive to potential candidates. We have candidates and sometimes they'll look at a role. There might be 20 in a particular location. If 15 are offering accommodation, they won't even look at the 5 that aren't. They'll start with those 15. Other trends, we're seeing owners paying more retention bonuses to staff. And normally this is after 12 months service, but we're seeing sometimes they pay it annually after this. And for the first time ever this year, I've started to hear of employers that are offering sign-on bonuses as an extra enticement for luring potential staff to their pharmacy. And of course, pay isn't the only way to compensate employees for a job well done. You should consider other forms of compensation as well. Paid time off, staff discounts, professional development are all considerations. One particular employee is an example. I know of one particular employee, and she's actually negotiated a deal with the local IGA, and all their staff in the pharmacy actually get 5% off all purchases. And that can be really attractive to a prospective employee in this current climate. We find that employers who do offer a diverse combination of compensation will make the job offer more attractive to a candidate. Okay. So now looking at career progression and training. So the prospect of career progression is often fundamental in a candidate's decision to accept a job offer. And so it's essential that you as a company look to highlight all available opportunities for professional development. assess what professional services and areas of practice your pharmacy currently offers, and then establish a tailored professional development scheme for your staff. Then during the interview process, gain an understanding of the job seeker's current skill set and where they would like to upskill, and be prepared to clearly outline how you can create a career progression and training plan that's specifically suited to them. We find in this market, owners who are prepared to think a little differently, go above and beyond, will be the most successful in attracting staff to their business ultimately. Okay, so now we've covered obviously, what employees want. We're going to move on to your recruitment strategy and probably spend a little bit more time here in talking about, we've established that to attract the best talent in the market, your pharmacy needs to create a reputation as somewhere where candidates want to work. So once you've put all the time and effort into making this happen, you want to ensure that your actual recruitment process is effective in conveying this to potential employees. And you also want to make sure that the process is as efficient and clear-cut as possible, so to ensure that your applicants don't then lose interest along the way. So everything from a well-written job advertisement to the way the successful candidate is offered the position and then onboarded should reflect your business in a positive light. Okay, so moving on to that job advertisement. So the first step in attracting skilled candidates is writing a great job advertisement. So one of the biggest mistakes we see in job advertisements is an employer who writes the advertisement solely based on what they are looking for. So for example, they highlight, I want 15 years experience, I want X number of qualifications, I want this many certificates, rather than actually putting themselves in the candidate's position and thinking about what's going to attract and motivate that particular candidate. So job seekers are spoilt for choice at the moment. So, you only need to hop on, one of the job boards and type in pharmacist, and you'll find Seek and Adzuna, I think they've easily got over 3,000 jobs. Indeed, doing a quick search, I think I saw about 1,500 jobs. So in this market, it's vital that your advertisement stands out and that potential employees see it and can apply for it. Writing great job advertisements isn't necessarily easy. I know here at Ravens, all of our consultants that start with us, we send them on quite extensive job writing training. And then on top of that initial training, we also send them regular training courses to ensure that they're staying relevant with the latest tech in what people are looking for. And most importantly, keeping current with the factors motivating job seekers, as this will change over time. So from recent research, the top 3 drivers you'll see for job seekers within, and this is in particular for the healthcare space, salary and compensation, work-life balance, and career development. So if your advertisements are not addressing each of these drivers, then basically you'll struggle to appeal to the best candidates. Job seekers are also looking for clarity in a job advertisement, and that means including all the relevant information in your ad, including company profile, history, position duties, skills, work hours, salary, benefits, and career opportunities. Basically, a lot of people don't include everything, and that's what job seekers really, that's ultimately what they're looking for. We sometimes find too that employers are reluctant to disclose the salary in their job advertisements. Research currently shows that 90% of job seekers will expect the salary to be featured in a job advertisement and would be put off on applying for that role if it weren't disclosed. Also to note, you sometimes see the phrase, salary is negotiable with experience or something similar. That doesn't inspire confidence, and it's a huge red flag to applicants who basically assume the salary is so low that you think, well, I may as well not mention it at all. In terms of where to advertise, online job boards are probably where most job seekers will look first, and Seek is probably the most well-known, although it is a bit hit and miss. Social media also becoming more popular as well, and you can share ads on LinkedIn and Facebook. Employers are also pharmacy employers in particular, are becoming more creative and are starting to include more video with their advertisements. And most platforms that you find, like Seek or LinkedIn, will have an easy option where you can upload the video. I think a video can be particularly effective if you're looking to attract candidates who might not know a great deal about your pharmacy. If it's not a big branded pharmacy, it's smaller, you could feature staff talking about what they like about working for your pharmacy. You could also follow staff in performing their duties so that job seekers can get an idea of what a typical day might look like in the role. The possibilities are endless, really. So, and just lastly on the advertisement, keep in mind that many candidates we find are lost because employers take too long to contact them. Value their time as well as yours, and contact them to book in an interview time as soon as you scan through their profile and decide if they're ultimately suitable for the role. Okay, so moving on, the interview process. So relationships formed through the interview process can often make the difference as to whether a candidate accepts an offer or not, as it provides them with an idea of what working relationships they can expect within the role. So whether it's over the phone or in person, a candidate's first impression of your company is critical. During the interview, whilst your goal is to assess the candidate's skill and personal attributes and determine ultimately if they're the right fit for your business, it's also important to make them feel that you're as keen to get to know them as they are about being considered for the role. Training for managers, I believe, before interview process is essential, not only to ensure that they're aware of best practice when it comes to behavioural-based questions and knowing what they shouldn't really be asking, but what it also does is successfully allows them to present both themselves and the company in the best possible light. I always find that it's important to ask a candidate their salary expectations at the time of interview. That way you can build your compensation package around that, provided what they're requesting is reasonable and within your capabilities for the new hire. Again, getting back to timing and the candidate's time, at the end of the interview, give them an indication of what the next steps will be and when they can expect to hear back from you. We find this especially important if you may need to consult with other partners, managers, other people before you can move forward to the next stage, and that might take a little time. So if you don't set clear expectations, you run the risk that, the candidate thinks that you're not interested and they'll take another offer before you even have the chance to get back to them. So moving on now to the job offer and then onboarding the candidate. So after you've conducted your interviews and chosen your top candidate, the next step is to obviously extend the job offer. Always good idea to start with a verbal offer, and that way you can determine if the candidate has any questions or concerns at that point, and then followed by the written offer. And I would always suggest within 24 hours of acceptance of that verbal offer. Waiting too long before sending the candidate the written offer can cause the candidate to wonder if you were as keen and basically invested as they are at this point. In addition, the initial verbal offer you make to the candidate should be your best offer available. We find that some employers sort of think that it's better, look, I'll go in, I'll offer a lower salary at the start, and then I'll increase it from there. We see it all the time. The candidate will be at interview. They will say, for example, okay, I'm looking at a starting salary of $50 per hour. And the employer will think, well, perhaps in my initial offer, I'll put it at 47, 48. And then, I'll see how they go after a few months, and then I'll up it to 50. in this market at the moment, you will lose that candidate. Candidates are spoilt for choice and often may have multiple offers on the table, so that if they think that you're wasting their time, they'll walk away. And that's not to say that the job offer shouldn't include the offer of an increase in salary after a certain period of time, but make sure that's very clear what is expected of the new employee to get that increase. We've seen too often an employer will say, oh, look, I'll increase the salary after 3 months if they're going well. After 3 months, the employee thinks, I'm doing fantastically, I'm killing this. And the employer will say, well, they're good, but they're not outstanding. So no, we won't give the increase. The employer will walk. So you need to specify in that contract exactly what is expected of them to achieve that increase. And keeping in mind that hiring a new employee is not the end of the recruiting process. So you will need to develop a streamlined onboarding process as well. And that will make the transition period much easier for both your new employee and the rest of the team, and ensures they're happy and productive from day one. So by following all these steps in your recruitment process, I think you will effectively attract the best employees for your business. So that's the end of my presentation. So I think we've got a bit of time for some questions. Daniel, are there any questions?
Well, I haven't had any come in, but I've been very diligent. And as I showed you at the start with my mad scribbles, I've got some comments and some questions if you're up for those.
Yep, sure.
So I love that idea of the 5% off at the IGA, because it's something that adds value to the employees that the business kind of gives or has arranged.
Yes.
But it doesn't cost them anything. It doesn't come off the bottom line. And I appreciate there is a need in this market to sometimes offer things like signing bonuses or accommodation and things like that. Accommodation is a little bit of a different kettle of fish, but a signing bonus, the effect of that wavers over time. It dissipates. 2 years later, it's like, oh, I've spent that money. Where every time you go to the IGA, you're saving money, whether it's just for your lunch, you're going to get groceries for the family afterwards. So I really like that as an innovative idea that doesn't actually cost anything to the business. And I think that's what a lot of businesses struggle with. They're like, we would like to give things more to employees, but we have to take it out of budget. So I really like that idea. And I mean, you could go around to a ton of businesses that people frequent, and gyms. I'm just childcare. I'm just making things up as I go.
Your vouchers.
Curly one for you. Well, I don't know. Maybe they're not that curly because I don't work in recruitment. But what sort of advice do you have to help make interviews less boring or even less cliche with some of the questions that people get asked? Do you have any advice on that front?
Oh, goodness. Less boring.
Because they're not fun. They're boring, right? What are your strengths?
I don't think so.
Oh, really?
I interview people daily for my living, so I quite like an interview.
All right. Well, we'll skip that question. Maybe that's me needing to do some self-reflection on being more engaged at the interview stage. So let's say people are attracted to culture.
Yes.
Let's assume that a pharmacy has an amazing culture, but culture in a workplace like that is kind of something that you need to go and experience. How does a pharmacy really position and show somebody a great culture when they're still in the interview phase and kind of, there's an air gap between them and the culture of the business at that stage?
Look, it can be difficult. One of the ways, the best way to do it is through your staff working at the pharmacy already. So you'll find that if the staff have great things to say about the pharmacy, you can communicate this to a potential hire at an interview stage. But you want to be, even before they get to the interview, you want them to be aware of it. So you want to be putting it, on your website. You want to, candidates will research a business before they go for an interview. They'll look at what they can online. So if you've got some great reviews in particular, not just from your customers, but from your staff, that will make all the difference, definitely.
Yeah, and I just wanted to circle back around and almost reiterate your advice, or put an underline under it, that advice around telling people what the salary is, and writing advertisements or job ads that are from the perspective of the person that's reading it, that is applying, that is the candidate, talking to them, because too often we just have our business hat on. This is what I need. And it's not an or proposition, but speaking to the person as if they're going to be the ones that come and work for you is a great way to frame it. And we all know that when we go to a website and there's no prices on it, it's the same feeling that we get. They're hiding something. It must be something wrong. That's why they're not telling me. And we go to a competitor. So you're potentially communicating yourself out of a lot of candidates if you're not talking about the salary.
Oh, definitely, without a doubt. And I think, as I said, that people, if you just put negotiable with experience, they'll think, oh, it must be really, really bad. I know that a lot of employers don't like to disclose it because there's some secrecy around their current salary policies with other staff, and if other staff see that, and if I'm not paying the same, you probably need to review your salary, your whole salary structure, if that is the case, I would suggest.
Yeah, very good. All right. Well, Heidi, as always, it's a pleasure, full of great advice. Appreciate you sharing with us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so next up we have Mary. The topic is all about not forgetting the rules and the regulations, the fun stuff, Mary tells me. But it is very important, because taking on a new employee, it can be a really positive time for your business. It brings energy into the pharmacy. Employees can be excited to have some new workers join the organisation, but there definitely are legal considerations that you need to keep in mind as an employer. And recruitment legislation is complex. It's ever evolving, so you do need to stay abreast of it. And there is no one better to help us than Mary Ibrahim, who's a senior associate at Meridian Lawyers. And Mary's going to give you some great insights into how to comply with your legal obligations. And ultimately, that's going to be about minimising your legal exposure when you're recruiting staff into your pharmacy. So welcome, Mary.
Thank you. Let me try and get my screen up.
This is always the fun part. Excellent.
Okay, I think that's working.
We can see it.
Perfect. All right. So look, thank you for the introduction. So my name is Mary, and I am a senior associate at Meridian Lawyers. Now, recruitment is obviously an essential part of your business. So it is quite important to have the rules and regulations in mind when you are hiring an employee. So the information I'll be providing tonight, just general disclaimer here, it is just general information. So we always recommend that you do seek independent advice specific to your circumstances if you do ever find yourself in a situation where you are needing that specific advice. But just to get started here, look, when you are hiring an employee, you should pay particular attention to how you advertise for the role, how you conduct the interview, the pre-employment checks that may be required, the offer and the acceptance element, the contract and any award requirements, and of course, lastly, the Fair Work information statement. And the purpose of doing all this is to avoid legal claims and set your business up for success. And when you do this, issues such as breach of contract, breach of award and legislation requirements can be avoided when you do set things up properly at the start. Now, the presentation on my end will look at it from the legalistic side of it. So it might be a little bit more, less, I guess, not as enticing as from the recruitment perspective from Heidi's presentation that we just saw, but it is important to keep the legal aspects and the obligations there at the forefront of your mind so you don't find yourself in sticky water down the track. Now, let's just jump into advertising. Oh, sorry, I think my screen's doing funny things.
I think we're good. We can see that. We can
Oh,
see
you're
the
good?
slide with advertising. Yep.
Oh, okay. Sorry, it must have been on my end then.
No problem.
So with advertising, it is important to be cautious with the wording that you use when advertising for the role. Federal discrimination laws make it unlawful to publish or display an advertisement that indicates or could reasonably be understood to indicate, and that's the tricky part, an intention to discriminate on the grounds such as gender, marital status, pregnancy, potential pregnancy, disabilities in those arrangements being made for determining who you will effectively offer the job to, and also in the terms on which the job is actually offered. And this could include the remuneration that's offered, access to training, promotions, transfers within the business, even as far as dismissal or any other type of detriment to the employee. And this requirement extends to not just the person who's writing the advertisement, but it also extends to the corporation itself. So you don't actually have to be the one to publish or display the advertisement or the notice, but you just have to cause or permit it to be published. So for example, you own the business, but you give your manager full management over what they want to write in the advertisement. Effectively, you are also responsible for their actions as the corporation. So when putting together an advertisement or giving your staff training on how to advertise, you should avoid gender or race references and also avoid stereotypes. So I'll run through a few examples with you. So avoid gender-specific job titles such as salesman. It's a very common one that can be used, but opt for something that's a little bit more gender neutral, such as salesperson, especially in today's day and age. You can just never be too sure, and you always need to be gender neutral because it's the proper way to be. Now, advertisements should not favor or make assumptions about a particular marital status. And for example, asking for, and this is a very different one, but asking for a fun, single, loving person who is free to work nights. This may be direct discrimination on the basis of a marital status. And another third example is avoid upper age limits. So for example, using words such as trainee required, maximum 28 years old. This may be indirect discrimination against, for example, female applicants who have temporarily left the workforce due to pregnancy, or any other one who has left the workforce temporarily due to, for example, carer responsibilities. This may also constitute age discrimination. So it is important to be selective with the way that you advertise for the role. On the screen here is an extract of a job advertisement that was actually used by a business in New Zealand. Now, this is an example of a gender bias advertisement that got them in a little bit of hot water, and it's an example of how not to advertise. You can see here it says they're seeking good personality, ability to deal with male banter, and are sociable but not distracting. So that's definitely an example to steer away from. Your advertising should be focused on the requirements of the role and essentially highlight the points of the job description. So things like the required skills, the required qualifications, and any other key aspects that's required to actually perform the role itself. If you stick to that side of it, you should find that you're in safe waters there. And if you don't steer away from that, then you should be all good. Now, when you get to the interview phase, it can, on the face of it, appear to be a relatively simple step in the process. But it is actually one of the main parts of the process that you should give extra attention to. Where and when you hold the interview itself is important. If the role is for a day job, but you're only holding interviews in the evening, excuse me, sorry. If you're only holding interviews in the evening, this can prevent prospective employees who have, for example, carer responsibilities from being able to attend. Now, a way around this is to provide options So don't just have one particular interview day, time, and location. So providing options is a good way, and don't hold it against someone who can't make an evening interview for a day job, for example, because if you do, it could lead to indirect discrimination if the reason that they actually can't attend is because of carer responsibilities. Federal legislation does prohibit direct and indirect discrimination, and just very generally, indirect discrimination is, for example, where policies and practices which appear to be neutral, but they actually have the effect of disadvantaging someone because of, let's say, their gender or a particular marital status, or, as I said before, pregnancy, potential pregnancy, or disability. Just be mindful as well during the interview process of the questions that you actually ask. Ensure that the questions are actually relevant to the job. So, for example, you can ask questions that test the communication skills of a prospective employee. You can ask questions regarding their experience, their ability to carry out the tasks of the role. So keep it focused around that. But look, of course, we understand friendly conversation and building rapport during the interview is actually quite a critical part in determining the suitability of someone for your business. However, just another little red flag, beware of friendly banter that may lead to someone to think, why didn't I get the role? So you don't want to accidentally say something that could leave someone to think that they have not been hired for an unlawful reason. And on the screen here, you will see an example of that. So a very common friendly conversation is congratulating someone for their marriage and just, having a general chit chat about whether they, are interested in having kids or not. That, while innocently asked, could be perceived as discrimination based on potential pregnancy. So just be cautious in terms of that. And look, there are also times when sensitive questions need to be asked. That's sometimes, look, it's unavoidable. But if that is the case, ensure that it's done in a way that is relevant to the requirements of the role. So, for example, if someone mentions or has a known disability, you can ask about it. You're not forbidden to ask about it, but you will need to consider if you can reasonably accommodate the disability within your business. It's not okay to just rule out that person for the role because of the disability. This is particularly important because discrimination claims can also be made by prospective employees. It's not just limited to current or former employees. So that's why the interview process is one of the critical steps in of itself. Now, if we'll move on to pre-employment checks. So if the role requires a pre-employment check, such as a criminal record, qualifications or references, or even medical checks, where possible, these should be done before the role is offered, and they should most definitely be done before the employment actually commences. Forms that you use must be authorized, and medical checks should only be undertaken if they are actually relevant to the job. Don't just do them for the sake of it. It is important to note that strict privacy laws do apply when obtaining, using, and storing medical records. So if you are required to get a medical check for the role, ensure that you know the requirements and that you comply with any relevant privacy laws. And also, when you do come to do that qualification check or a reference check, just be aware of dodgy or non-authentic qualifications, and also be aware of the phone a friend references. These are becoming increasingly common at the moment. So just a couple of tips to be mindful of when you are conducting those checks. Going backwards then. All right. So when you actually do get to the stage of finding the right candidate and when you are ready to offer them the role, it's always recommended that the agreed terms and conditions of the role are provided in writing. So usually by the time you get to this point, you may have had a preliminary phone chat with them. You may have had a face-to-face interview. You may have even started talking about what you'll be offering them as part of the role. So the benefits, the salary. So those conversations by this point in time may have come up. So it is recommended that any terms that have been agreed, any conditions of the role are actually provided in writing. Now, the effect of putting it all together in a written contract of employment gives certainty of the terms, and it actually locks in the agreement once it's accepted and signed. Having that written contract can avoid all sorts of legal issues and disputes because the agreement is expressly there in front of you in black and white, and it leaves minimal room for a he said versus she said situation. And that often is what occurs when there isn't a written contract of employment. One person says, no, this was the agreement. The other person has a completely different view of what the agreement was. And then it's left up to the judge or the courts to battle it out as to what the actual intention is. So if you get it all there written down, signed, then it leaves minimal room for that kind of argument. Having a job offer in writing can also set up performance management for success down the track later on, if you ever get to a point where you do need that performance management aspect of it. When you are preparing a contract of employment, the content of it is important as it sets out the obligations of each party. So the employer has obligations and the employee has obligations, and this is all put together in that contract of employment. When you are preparing it, a few key items that you should include would be the names of the employer and the employee, the position, title, and status, the remuneration, so what they'll actually be paid, any award benefits or requirements, the primary location where the employee will work, or alternatively, if they're required to travel around, that should be specified as well in the contract. It should have a clause that says the written contract is the final agreement and that it replaces any prior discussions or understandings. And this is just to ensure that what the contract says is what the actual final agreement is. You don't want to have to be relying on an email from 5 years ago that is also attached to the most recent contract. Just keep it simple. The contract is the final agreement. It overrides any other prior discussions or understandings. Ensure that you've got the notice period in the contract and the written requirements around providing notice. And this is to avoid any disputes related to implied notice. Put in there any termination requirements and also post-employment restraints. But with that particular last point, so with post-employment restraints, we do recommend that you seek independent advice with respect to that, because it can be a little complicated with post-employment restraints, but generally speaking, it is a good way to protect the interests of your business. Okay, now, when you are preparing a contract of employment, you should always consider the requirements of any applicable modern award, because the terms of the contract cannot be less than the terms set out in the award. If they are, then it could be an unlawful clause in the contract. Now, the primary relevant award to the pharmacy industry is the Pharmacy Industry Award. Ensure that you are always checking the award. It's constantly updated by the Fair Work Commission, especially come July every year. You'll find the annual wage reviews. So be sure that you are constantly up to date with the award. See if it actually applies. And if it does apply, check the employee's classification, the most current pay rate, and make sure you get it right. This needs to go in the contract, and if you do get it wrong, it could result in underpayment claims. So that's a really important element in a contract, just to make sure from the onset that you are getting it correct. If the modern award is applicable, it will apply regardless of whether or not there's a written contract. So even if there isn't a written contract, it doesn't make the modern award null and void. It will still apply. But it is important to know that under the award, some provisions need to be in writing to be enforceable, and these provisions can be included in the contract. So I'll run through some of them for you. So some of these include with part-time employees. So at the time of engaging a part-time employee, the award actually requires you as the employer to agree in writing with your employee about the number of hours that they are to work each day, the days of the week on which they will work, the times at which they'll start and finish each day, and when meal breaks may be taken and their duration. So that's an express term of the award. So when you are engaging a part-time employee, it is crucial that you agree with the employee in this respect and put it in the contract. Now, generally speaking, when you do put together an employment contract, it does naturally cover off on these elements, but just pay particular attention that your contracts actually do cover off on these elements. Notifying your employee about which day is a regular payday must be in writing. So that's something that could usually be put in a contract of employment. You don't regularly change your payday, but if you do put it in a contract and it does change, that's easily rectified by issuing them a new notice in writing. And another thing that can go in the contract is any annualized wage arrangements. So the award actually says that any annualized wage arrangements must be in writing as well. So if you agree with the employee that they'll receive an annual wage as opposed to an hourly rate, then that's something that can easily be popped into the contract when you're drafting it. Now, look, as I already mentioned, these terms can go into the contract from the onset. Just be mindful that under the award, and I'm going to reiterate this point, that the part-time employment requirements must be agreed in writing at the time the employee is engaged. So best practice is once you decide you want to make the offer, pop it all in a contract, send it to the employee to review, and that way it's all there. If you do require employees to work on a public holiday, the contract can be used to set out those reasonable expectations. So you put a little section in there if they are required. We ultimately do recommend that you have your contracts looked over by a lawyer or a HR professional to ensure that it does comply with the requirements of any applicable awards and that it also adequately protects your business. Now, sorry, my thing seems to be going backwards. There we go. Now, a document that can sometimes be missed is the Fair Work Information Statement. So this is a document that's issued by the Fair Work Ombudsman, and it must be provided to all new employees at the commencement of their employment. It can be provided to them in person, by mail, or by email, but we find the easiest way to ensure that you're providing this to employees and that you're not missing it is that you can make reference to it in the contract and just give it to them as an attachment to the contract. So if you do it together in the one go, you can ensure you're giving it to them and you won't be missed. Make it as part of your checkbox, part of documents that must be provided to all your employees. Now, this Fair Work Information Statement, for anyone who hasn't seen it, it provides information on the National Employment Standards, an employee's right to request flexible working arrangements, modern awards, making agreements under the Fair Work Act, individual flexibility arrangements, freedom of association and workplace rights, such as general protections, termination of employment, right of entry, and the role of the Fair Work Ombudsman and the role of the Fair Work Commission. Now, something that's a little bit more newer is that in addition to the Fair Work Information Statement, employers must also give every new casual employee a copy of the Casual Employment Information Statement at the same time. So if you've got a new casual employee, they'll get both statements. Now, the Casual Information Statement, this provides your employees, your casual employees, with information on the definition of what a casual employee is, when the employer has to offer casual conversion, when the employer doesn't have to offer it, when an employee can request it, what the casual conversion entitlements of employees who are employed by a small business employer, and also the role of the Fair Work Commission to deal with disputes about casual conversion. All right, so some key takeouts from today. Carefully consider the wording of your job advertisements. Be mindful of the questions that you ask and ensure that the questions are relevant to the job. Conduct pre-employment checks before the commencement of the employment. Offer an acceptance. It's best to have a written contract that sets everything out in black and white. Consider any award terms and requirements, and don't forget to issue those Fair Work information statements to all your employees. That's the end of my part of the presentation. So we do have some time left over for questions as well.
Excellent. I do have a couple here, Mary. First one.
Yep.
Is it okay to advertise that a specific foreign language is an advantage, but not essential in the role requirement section?
Look, that's generally okay, because you're not making it a condition of the role. So unless it is an actual express requirement for them to perform that role, making it an advantage if you have a lot of clientele, for example. I know, like, if you work in a, maybe not relevant to the pharmacy industry, but if you work in a migration agency, you can have a lot of clients from a specific nationality, and it is an advantage to have someone who can communicate with them. Just again, be mindful with the way that you word it, but look, it's not generally problematic if you're not going to rule out candidates because they can't speak that language.
Playing devil's advocate, if that is soft wording, i.e. it's not essential, but it would be an advantage, if that's soft wording that somebody uses so as not to come across as being discriminatory, but it's actually more than an advantage. We'd be able to provide much, much better care and services to our community because a lot of them have come from a non-English speaking background and they speak this specific language in the area. Is it okay to push a little bit and say you do need that as a requirement?
Well, effectively, if you're advertising it in the way that's just been worded, look, it's not essential but an advantage, it's putting you above other candidates because you have that extra skill. So if you look at it from that way, I wouldn't say it's discrimination. But if you say, look, I'm not hiring you just because you can't speak that language and it's not a critical element to actually to perform the essential requirements of the role, that's where we start looking into verging into the discrimination element.
Yeah, very good. Okay, so let's move on to religion. So, and some people may have seen the other week that the Essendon Football Club, they appointed a new CEO, but then the next day they sacked him because of his affiliation with the church that has some pretty outward discriminatory views. But we know that we can't ask about religion in the decision-making process. And so I was going to frame a question around that, but then somebody sent in a question just now that says, how do we ask the question if somebody requires something like prayer time? So this person here is given an example, said, once I had a pharmacist who had to do his prayer at our peak trading hours, and he never mentioned that he required this concession of excusing himself for his religious commitment. And so the pharmacy owner and the business was unprepared. The team wasn't prepared for it either. How do we navigate that? Because we know we're not allowed to really specifically make a decision based on people's religion, but clearly they are things that probably need to be discussed so that everybody is prepared and we don't cause problems or make employees even feel uncomfortable. How do we navigate that?
So the key consideration there is, what do you plan on doing with the information? If you plan on asking the question just so, look, if it's going to be too much of a hassle for your business to employ someone who needs, some specific time away for prayer time, then that's potentially not the correct reason to be asking the question. But if you are asking the question so you can determine whether it can be reasonably accommodated within your business and to potentially schedule training at a different time or split up training so they've got an option, if they can't attend the first session, they can attend the second session. I don't see an issue with asking it in that respect because you're looking at how you can accommodate it within your business. But if you're purely asking it just so, look, too much of a hassle, I don't want anyone in the business that I have to accommodate for in that respect, then to me, that could be bordering onto discrimination.
Yeah. Okay. I've got a curly one and I'm not sure I've got my information correct here. So you might say you're barking up the wrong tree, but I saw a post in passing on LinkedIn today that said the law or the framework is changing around removing the clause in employment contracts that we often see that says that employees aren't allowed to discuss their salary with other employees. Are you aware of that, just firstly?
So as far as I'm aware, there's no express law that says you're not allowed to. It's more derived out of company policies. So generally it's a company initiative and policy where they don't want that discussed within their business. As far as any laws coming in to stop that or manage that, I haven't heard much about it.
Yeah, I think it was something. I'm just looking it up now. I think it was something from the recent job summit.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
No, I haven't. I've just returned from a month of annual leave.
Yeah, that's okay. Let's just discuss it. Let's just discuss it and make it sort of people aware about it. But it says the headline here says that pay secrecy clauses to be banned as the federal cabinet signs off on new workplace laws. So it sounds as though that's going to be something.
So it's been discussed by the sounds of it. Look, until it's actually passed off in law, it's hard to speak to, because if it's part of cabinet discussions at the moment, it can actually be affected, or it can just fizzle out into nothing.
Yeah, good point.
So look, as far as whether or not that's actually going to eventuate into something, that's something yet to be seen. But at the moment, it's more, as I said, company initiative and policies. There would be obviously a good reason behind if they are looking to bring in some laws to remove that. But I think it's a wait and see at the moment.
I'm guessing you're going to say, I don't know, and it depends, but I'm going to ask the question anyway.
Yeah.
Do you think if that like pushed through on face value, is that something that would probably get applied, for want of a better word, retrospectively? So let's say I had a contract, it says that I'm not allowed to discuss my salary with people, but then they change the law. Do those sorts of clauses in a contract, do you think that they get sort of, they're not applicable anymore?
Yeah, look, very broadly, or generally, yes, because you can't, there's now a law saying it's not lawful, any contract that has it, whether it was drafted yesterday or today, it's not going to be a lawful clause. So effectively, it could just become null and void. Yeah,
and I kind of wanted to just sort of go down that path and ask that question and get that point, because Heidi was talking about, not advertising the salary because maybe you're going to pay people more than what existing employees are paying. And so if they've got clauses in their contracts that says you're not allowed to talk about it, that might be something that people need to do to get their house in order, because if that law gets pushed through and those clauses are no longer lawful, then employees might start talking about it. You might be creating a problem.
Yeah, look, I think in this circumstance, it's best to wait and see what happens.
That's no fun, lawyer. That's no fun.
It's always the way, though. It's always best to wait and see what happens, because look, you can remove it if you want, but you might not have to.
Yeah, excellent. That was I enjoyed that, and thanks for the chat and the curly questions at the end. Thanks for that, Mary.
Thank you.
So now that we've covered off attracting employees, navigated the rules and the regulations, and we have this amazing, fantastic new employee or two in the pharmacy, everyone's very excited. And so now our attention needs to shift to retaining them, because employee retention is key to being able to operate a robust and a thriving pharmacy. And the best employee retention strategies are the ones that directly connect to the employee experience. And that's why I'm excited to hear from Elise Apolloni, who's from an award-winning community health hub, Capital Chemist. And Elise is a pharmacist and managing partner at Capital Chemist in Braidwood and Canberra, Huskisson and Waniasa. And if that doesn't keep her busy enough, Elise is also the vice president of the PGA ACT branch. And I can tell you, being in Canberra myself, Capital Chemist is a hugely respected business in the community and a sought-after employer with amazing stuff. So I'm sure Elise is going to be full of great advice on how to connect listening and insight and action to help you retain employees over the long term in your pharmacy. So welcome, Elise.
Thank you very much. Let me just bring up my PowerPoint. Is that working for everybody?
It is.
Fabulous. Thank you. Thank you for sticking out to the end of this webinar this evening. As Daniel said, my name's Elise, and I am a managing partner at Capital Chemist Waniasa in the ACT, but I also am a partner in a couple of other pharmacies across ACT and New South Wales. And I'm here to talk employee retention with you. And just to be fully honest and upfront, we too have lost team members during the pandemic, as I'm sure many of you, if not all of you, who have joined this evening have as well. So I'm not immune from the experiences that a lot of you are having and have had. However, I believe that we have a pretty great culture and thoughts and ideas to share with you all this evening. And if that helps you, wherever you may be in Australia, make your journey a little bit easier and make your team a bit more solid and make your pharmacy serve your community even better, then I'm all for sharing. And we'll hopefully have time for questions at the end too. So when I read the the comment about what employee retention, I actually find that term a little bit difficult to listen to. It sounds very clinical and sort of not very emotive to me. So the way I think of employee retention is how to create an environment that is too good for somebody to leave. Noting that there's always factors outside of our control, you know, if people move away, if people have changes in their health, if people you know, have extreme changes to their life. But all things being equal, if a person is living near you, if a person's circumstances mean that they can continue to work, how can you make sure that that person still wants to turn up to work for you every day as opposed to somebody else, whether it be at another community pharmacy or another health setting or another industry altogether? And so that's what I hope to share some ideas around today. And in terms of why I think we want to retain team members, it's around having consistency in our pharmacies, around making sure that our team is productive and that we're focused on business as usual and not sort of the ebb and flow of team members and the constant state of flux that can result in that situation. It's a nice experience for the team, both in terms of stability, but also actual experience and people that know what they're doing in the pharmacy and people who, you know, have confidence in their role, as well as that then helping patients have a smoother experience in the pharmacy as well. Everyone knows it's so nice when patients come into the pharmacy and ask specifically for you or for a team member, and then you can actually meet that need. So having, you know, lots of flux in the staffing place means that you can't meet that patient need as often, and that lets our patients down. So we want to make sure that we have that consistency for as long as we possibly can. And I don't know about you, but when things are stressful, when there's a lot happening, when I'm not focused on the bigger picture because there's so much little task type stuff happening, whether it's recruiting or, you know, worrying about different HR type problems, it doesn't allow you to think big. It doesn't allow you to focus on the future and think about, you know, what you can do to make your pharmacy the best pharmacy it can possibly be. So in having retention of your team, in having a great environment that people want to stay in, it gives you more time and space to think bigger, to think about how you can improve your pharmacy and to ultimately make it a better place for the community to use. And then, of course, there's economical considerations because recruitment is not free. Training people is not free, and that all could be better resourced and, you know, designated towards people that you already have, and investing in them and creating better opportunities for the people that you already have instead of trying to recruit somebody that, you know, you may not be able to find in this current market, as I'm sure many are experiencing at the moment. So my thoughts and ideas are sort of categorised into 4 different areas. But I suppose there's things that are in our control that we absolutely have to own, and things that, as employers of pharmacists across Australia and pharmacy assistants and many other types of team members for that matter, we have to recognise when it is our problem versus when it is something that is beyond our control, you know, industry-wide, things that are bigger than, you know, our small businesses that exist all over the country. And so there's things that we can't necessarily change today or tomorrow, but there's plenty of things that we can. So I'm trying to focus on those things today and also share what we do in our pharmacies to hopefully provide a great experience, a few great ideas, I suppose, to take home and maybe implement at your location, wherever you may be. So there's employee considerations, which I'll go into some detail about all of these, the environment, professional factors, and then employer levers. And I just want to say, I've put that last, the employer stuff, because I think it's easy to feel like things are being inflicted upon you and something's happening to you as an employer, but it's not about us. It is not, we shouldn't really be thinking of ourselves in this situation. We need to very much be looking outwardly here and think about how we can make it as best as possible for the people that we're either trying to recruit or retain, and not so much about ourselves. So I think I've put that last because I actually think that part is what we often focus on why me, or why is this happening, or how come I can't get more people. And I think we need to be thinking more strategically outwardly to hopefully capture a more solid workforce for the future. So employee considerations. I think it is absolutely fundamental as a pharmacy owner that I know the people that I am managing and that I'm leading. Our Capital Chemist group is very much of the philosophy that every single capital chemist in the country has a working, at least a full-time equivalent working partner in the pharmacy at all times, or most of the time, within reason. Our pharmacy's open 90 hours a week. It's not really possible for me to be here all the time. But making sure that there's someone on the ground that feels the pain of different situations with the team. You know, we feel the pressure of the pandemic. We feel the pressure of different rollouts of various programs. We feel the pressure of the public when things are happening to community pharmacy. We need to be there alongside them, and that is a very respected position to have as a pharmacy owner. And so I would not underestimate the power of having someone on the ground who's actually there every day, standing alongside their team members and not merely giving out direction from afar. That is fundamentally how we connect with our team members every day. So we have a team here at Waniasa of 45 people at the moment, and that's rapidly growing over time as we continue to grow as a pharmacy. And I don't really see our employees as employees as much as they're really like family, an extended family, a very large, family of different types of people from different walks of life, and bringing them all together under one roof. And I think that's a really important philosophy to have if you are considering the culture and what sort of feeling you want your pharmacy to have. Do you really know your team members? Do you know what's going on in their lives? Do you ask them how they're going? I know pharmacies, I know pharmacists that I've spoken to in the past that don't get greeted when they walk into work in the morning, or feel that employees don't acknowledge them, and employers for that matter. So, that even slather, genuine concern and care for your team really does help. There's been some of this discussed already today, which is great. I'm glad that we're all thinking along the same lines. Flexibility in these times is really important. No longer do I feel that a lot of pharmacists are interested in a full-time 38-hour week in a community pharmacy. We have a number of pharmacists now who we accommodate flexible arrangements for, whether it be that they work part-time at multiple locations in community pharmacy, or part-time with other roles, say for us in Canberra, the public service, or other sectors, even hospital pharmacy, for example, trying to diversify their experience, because a job that's more spread out like that feels to many less onerous, so it's less exhausting because they've got some variety every week. So we definitely accommodate that. We encourage it. And it actually brings value to us too, because we have, for example, pharmacists that work in the Vaccine Operations Centre, VOC. So we get first-hand understanding of some of, for example, administration errors around COVID-19 vaccines that are happening around the country. So we're able to better our processes here. We have pharmacists that have worked in hospitals and things as well that share those experiences and clinical skills, although we have plenty of clinical skills in our community pharmacy too, but that too is a reciprocal benefit to us. So we recognise and encourage and accommodate that. We have tailored packages to different team members, more so around what interests them. So we very much meet with our team. We understand what their goals are, where they want to be, and we make sure that we are moving them in the right direction of their chosen career path, whether it be ownership, whether it be a particular clinical avenue that they want to explore, to make sure that we really listen and therefore really develop that particular individual to their maximum potential. And I'm mainly talking about pharmacists at the moment for no particular reason, because we have plenty of pharmacy assistants as well that we support along career pathways. We have a pharmacy assistant that started with us in her very early 20s. She's our manager now of the pharmacy, essentially, and she has went through a ton of different trainings and career progression opportunities, and she has definitely grown into an incredibly capable person across her career, and continues to do so, and still gets really excited about pharmacy every day. So I think that constant opportunity for growth is really important. We have great support mechanisms that I will mention in a couple of slides' time. And we provide growth. So this photo here that I've got is me and Honor. We're the co-managing partners of Capital Chemist Moniata in the middle. But on either side of us is Kayla and Tash. And these two incredible women were our intern pharmacists in 2016. And we now co-own a pharmacy with them about an hour outside of Canberra, where they operate between them part-time, and then they also work in our pharmacy here in Canberra part-time. So they work a full-time equivalent at that pharmacy and a full-time equivalent for us too. And that's been incredible. And that is definitely noted and observed and respected by all of our other team members and pharmacists, particularly, to show that, we don't just say we're going to offer ownership. We don't just say that there's partnership opportunities and growth opportunities. We actually do it. And so I'm really proud of that. And I think that if you're sitting out there and maybe you've got a very decent percentage of pharmacy and you're having trouble retaining team members, particularly pharmacists, and you've never really considered bringing in more pharmacists into your ownership structure, I really encourage that reflection and thought process. It invigorates our ownership. It definitely makes our partnership more diverse and therefore stronger, and we think differently. We think we have better ideas for the different types of people that are involved with the different skill sets. So I think it's a great avenue to consider for everybody. Environment is really important. I've got a photo of our pharmacy here. We're about to knock down that big hair care, skincare wall and expand in January. We're very excited about that. And now we have stickers all over the floor since that photo's been taken because of COVID, obviously. But the environment's important. People want to feel happy and calm and peaceful when they come into work. They don't want it to be chaos and frantic and disorganized where possible. We talk a lot in our pharmacy about shift lengths and breaks. We encourage holidays. We encourage people, if they're sick, to not come into work. And this is important for team members. Particularly pharmacists feel an incredibly high level of obligation to come into work, no matter what's happening with them. But, they all deserve, the right entitlements and the ability to recharge and, to be sick if they are sick. And I think that having enough team members around us that allows that to be possible and allows our team members not to have anxiety about that process if they are unwell, for example, is an attractive feature of that flexibility. Shift length, because we're open so many hours, we can accommodate, for example, 4 really long days, and then people have a 3-day long weekend every weekend. So I think that's a nice point of difference. And then similarly, we have people that like to spread out their hours all differently, and some part-time and working other places too. Burnout wise, again, like I was talking about holidays, we need to make sure people actually take their breaks, and that includes, where possible, the leaders of the pharmacy too. But burnout is real at the moment. Burnout is not something that's easy to solve, in another 10 minutes of PowerPoint. But it is very much prevalent in pharmacies. But I think where we can give people proper breaks, where we recognise when workloads need to be augmented, for example, COVID vaccinations if we're getting a busy week, if we get a heavy week, if you know, our team doesn't, if you know, there's just a lot going on, we reduce appointments significantly. We definitely don't try and burn our team for the sake of, you know, offering a certain amount of time slots every week or what have you, if we have other factors like sick team members or other things going on at the pharmacy. So I think that's really important, to put your team first and to make sure that they're aware that you're advocating and protecting and promoting their welfare. In terms of culture and team building, we're very passionate about creating a great sort of, I suppose, fun, carefree, you know, humorous work environment. We have a great lolly drawer that's replenished, I feel like, hourly sometimes, that's you know, very richly used. We have coffee runs all the time. We have team get-togethers, parties and things where we celebrate together as a family. We in the ACT, we have a healthier work program that's funded by the government. So we actually have a plan every quarter for our team around, you know, participating in different fun runs or community activities, to, you know, having sort of like a, I forget the right word, like a book library where we do a book exchange and things at the pharmacy, and, you know, share different ideas, and, you know, to, you know, going on walks for our breaks instead of sitting in the pharmacy staff room, all those sorts of things. And we also use we use WhatsApp as our main communication method when we can't talk to our team members face to face. And so that means that we use that as sort of like a team sense, but we also have individual one-on-one chats with each team member and management. So we're able to regularly check in on our very large team, because it's physically impossible for Honor and I to actually see all of our team members every single week, simply because of the hours that the pharmacy operates. Professional factors around retention. I think it's really important for everyone to think about what's special about them and their pharmacy, and then make sure that that's well communicated. At Capital Chemist Waniassa, we are an extremely innovative pharmacy. We have a ton of professional services that we deliver on a regular basis, and particularly we love mental health and diabetes. They're our two main our main focuses most of the time. That innovation culture excites our staff, and we're getting a robot soon, which is so richly anticipated by our team, because I've been talking about it for about 5 years. So, you know, that kind of anticipation and constant thinking ahead and future focus means that our team, you know, is always looking for what's up next and trying to implement new services. We have a new service that Capital Chemist has launched only this week, the new medicine service, which is sort of a very structured and sort of tailored consult with our members of the public when they are receiving new medicine, and sort of formalised advice that's written down and recorded then and followed up on at an agreed interval in the future. And our team is just loving that, particularly after the couple of years that we've had, and, you know, some of the repetitiveness of that time. We love thinking ahead and focusing on what's to come. And so that's why this refit coming up is really exciting for us. And that growth and development, you know, what trainings can we send people to? Where can we make them better and in turn make our pharmacy better? Mentoring and making sure that we have those supportive relationships. We love having intern pharmacists. We love supporting people to reach their professional goals within our pharmacies and further afield. And I think that's that culture is recognised and prevalent and consistent, and it has been like that for a very long time. In terms of what we can do as an employer, pay, you know, we've all spoken about that today. We need to pay people properly, and I'm actually, for one, really happy with how the profession is moving in terms of pay and the increases. I think for a long time we've sort of been on the fence about, you know, we knew it should be more, we didn't know really how to make it happen, and I'm just glad that we're in a situation where we are making that happen. And I understand that that means rethinking about how we view wages, but I think that's a positive thing for the profession, and I want my team members to have a good life. I want them to be able to afford all the things that they want for their future, and I also want them to feel like they can achieve a great future with being in this pharmacy. So that's really important to us, and we certainly reviewed our pays regularly over the last few years particularly, but we've always had regular and consistent conversations with our team members in the forms of performance chats and things, to make sure that we're regularly engaging with them and that we understand and we're meeting their expectations and that they're meeting ours as well. Perks, so Capital Chemist has an employee assistance package where You know, if people need counselling, if people need psychological support, if people just want tips about how to do life better, they have that access 24/7. We also have a Capital Chemist Team Matters program where people can log in and create an account, and they get all sorts of like wholesale discounts at like JB Hi-Fi, or buying vouchers at any myriad of national businesses, discounts on cars and white goods and all sorts of things, all sorts of fun things. And the owners get access to, and I must say, it's just fantastic. I really love looking at that stuff. And I think, again, that just kind of is that extra layer of care and collegiality and excitement about working here versus somewhere else, which is nice. And then I suppose in terms of support, employee assistance package, like I said, we offer mental health first aid training to our team members as well, so they're better at supporting each other and other people in their lives as well. And then we, of course, focus on, as an employer, what is special about us, and making sure that we are the best version of ourselves that we can be as much as we can be. For me, I'm very passionate about intern pharmacists, so I'm always dedicating a significant amount of my time to make sure that they have the best possible year possible. So I've said a lot of possibles then, so that their entry into the profession is as the best possible start, you know, that rock solid foundation for the rest of their career. And I only have 1 year to get it right, and then I can't control what happens professionally to them after that. I'd like to think that I can, to an extent, if they stay with us for their professional journey. But, you know, I've got 1 year to make that lifelong impact in their career, and I take that role extremely seriously. So there are a few comments, and I'm happy to talk in more detail, but I also have a few questions, and I was hoping that it might sort of spark some self-reflection in some of you today as part of this seminar, in terms of reflecting on what your idea of a perfect workplace is. And I think when you think like that, would you want to work at your pharmacy? Are you fun to work for? And if you're not sure about the answers to those questions, it's okay to ask some of your team members, because that outward-facing impression, as Heidi was talking about earlier, you know, they're your best advocates for people working for you in the future. So making sure that your workplace is actually a preferential place to be is really important. Another question: how did the best boss you ever had make you feel? And you could also reflect on the worst boss you've ever had. Again, you know, there's certain factors and feelings and emotions and experiences that people have in their workplaces, and people are at work a lot. So we want to make sure that those interactions are as positive as they can be, and that family culture that we try as much as we can to foster here is absolutely critical in terms of people loving and enjoying coming every single shift, because they feel included, they feel part of it, and we just feel like we're just, you know, raising this great big blended family that just so happens to be a pharmacy team. I think reflecting on that is really important, and I think it gives you some interesting insights about how you might want to do pharmacy better if you're not doing it already. And then finally, a quick reflection on who is competing for your family members. Here in the ACT, for us, it's usually public service, and I think, and you know, if you can't compete wholeheartedly, I can't have people working from home, but I can create as best and flexible arrangements as I can at the pharmacy for them. We can give them the opportunity to work in the public service and here at the same time if they want it. We can make flexible arrangements, flexible rosters, you know, longer long weekends, which isn't as prevalent in the public service, and things like that, and all that. And knowing who you're competing with helps you better tailor your pharmacy and the way that you do pharmacy to hopefully meet more of the expectations of your team members. And finally, just a few things that I always sort of think about when I'm thinking about TENS just generally. A failure to plan is planning to fail. So again, there's a lot of unexpected things happening in the world right now, and I think it's really important that we recognise that we have to always be thinking ahead a little bit and make sure that we're planning for the unexpected, and nothing is known as clearly as it used to be. So we're always on the front foot. We're always sort of probably over-employing to an extent at the moment, to make sure that we have a good buffer, and also that we keep things as consistent as possible for the team, and we sort of have that as sort of a top agenda item for us at all times. And if you're not willing to pay, they may not stay. So I think pay is a crucial discussion point at the moment in a number of pharmacy forums, and I think we all need to accept that there's change there, and recalibrating how you feel about that is significantly important, and will hopefully help prevent too much movement in your team in the future. And always aiming as an employer, as a pharmacy owner, to be better than yesterday. It's okay to recognise that things haven't always been perfect, or you could do things better. What's more important than the past is what you're doing about it. So, you know, it doesn't mean that just because things may have been really difficult the last couple of years, or the team may be in flux for you at the moment, or what have you, it doesn't mean that you can't make a new solid ground and a new start and move your team forward and take them on a new journey and direction. And I hope that today's presentation sparks that within some of you, if you needed that from this. So I've got an email here, very happy to receive a couple of questions too. And I hope that was useful.
Excellent. As always, Elise, thank you for that. I do have one question from the audience, and then as usual, just because I'm self-indulgent, I've got lots of questions that I think will probably add value to the participants. First one, very straightforward. How do you go out and get those discounts from other businesses?
Yeah, so our head office actually organises that on behalf of all of our capital chemists nationwide. If you just look up employee benefit packages on Google, there's all sorts of organisations across Australia that you can subscribe to, and there's different like tiers of packages and things like that. Easy to do, doesn't require any special amount of effort, and it's just a rolling, ongoing thing. And we just, the only maintenance required is that if someone, for whatever reason, leaves, we just make sure that we remove that access so the perks aren't lifelong, and that they just reward the people they're intended to.
Yeah, there you go. That's a way easier answer than, oh, you should email, then call, then drop off a gift.
Yeah, no, it's not hard at all.
That's a great answer.
No.
Yeah, excellent. What are your thoughts on how to best recognise and thank great employees? Do we just get them some vouchers and a card and say thank you and pat them on the back, or does it need to be deeper and more personal than that?
We tailor it to the team member. We give bonuses if they're due. We give vouchers if they're due. We give people hugs if they're due. Pay rises, professional recognition. I'm always nominating our team members for professional recognition and awards in the industry more widely where it's due, because I think that's important, and that goes beyond just our four walls. We also reward I reflect on something we did recently. We had a team member who I just wrote a really personal card to. It's quite a long card. I put a fair bit of thought into it. And she burst into tears, and she showed 3 different pharmacy team members on her way out because she was so chuffed with the card. And I was thinking, oh gosh, have I got it all wrong over the years? You know, did we just need to write heartfelt cards? But that's actually what mattered to her. So knowing what makes your team members tick and tailoring it, you know, still recognising everyone as equally as you can, but also recognising when certain you know, types of recognition promote that, you know, bigger feelings in some people versus others.
Yeah. Look, we're out of time, but if you're happy to stay for a couple of minutes, Elise, and just indulge me with some questions. Yeah, cool. So one of the things that helps create a really good workplace that people want to stay at is a manager who is open and approachable. And most managers will say this: my door's always open. You can come and talk to me about anything. But how do you really live and breathe that, rather than, for want of a better phrase, employees just thinking that you pay lip service to it? Well, I've said it once, I've told them, they know. How do you live and breathe it day in, day out?
So we definitely, like I said, we have WhatsApp groups, which are not the same as your door physically being open, because that's a virtual door. But because we have those individual chats, that's part of it. So we communicate with people regularly, individually through those chats for 45 team members. So that helps. Part of it is wearing our hearts on our sleeve, and so in return, then getting that reciprocal behaviour back. So if I'm having a tough time, if I haven't got any sleep because both my children kept me up all night, you know, I come in and I tell people that, and I'll still come in with energy. But, you know, I think being honest about not just the great things. I think, you know, social media and everything, we're always only posting when things are brilliant in our lives, and, you know, and all the good things, and what you don't post is all the different tricky things that are happening at the same time. So keeping it real for your team, and then in return in sharing, and then having that culture of it being okay to discuss what's happening in your world, I think it comes back to you. So yeah, our teams are really open. Like I said, it's like family. So I'll come in and say, oh, this horrible thing's happened. And then, you know, I can cry if I need to cry. Team members reciprocate, and then we get on with the job. And it's just one of those things. It's normal culture for us, and it's okay not to be okay, and then work to be the distraction for not being okay, maybe in your personal life and what have you as well, which I think people appreciate in the heaviness of the last couple of years that we've had.
And I think approaching it, just being open and having conversations, sometimes it's just that little bit of sharing that's enough to almost be that thread that starts a conversation, rather than people going, oh, I'll have to have this big conversation. They just can, they can start small. So I think that's a great approach. Now, community service and support, you guys are absolutely amazing at it in your local community. I'm involved with a couple of charities, and always see the support that you and the team provide. In fact, I was lucky enough to pick up an auction prize that includes a hot air balloon ride.
Capital Chemist hot air balloon, nice.
I'm yet to go on, and my wife's not so keen. But it's not just corporate social responsibility from an organisation level. Some people in organisations are given time off to go and work on community projects. How important is it for your employees to be able to be part of supporting the community outside of the pharmacy, because they live and are part of that community themselves? How important is that in terms of creating a workplace people want to stay at?
Yeah, it's absolutely critical to some. So it's different things motivate different people. I've learned that over the years. I don't think it's a one size fits all, but Capital Chemist in Canberra, we have a community program. We put hundreds of thousands of dollars into it a year as all of our pharmacies pool the money together, and we distribute it amongst a number of extremely worthy causes and charities in the ACT. And we've done that for decades, and that's just what we do. And we don't pick big ticket charities. We pick, you know, like the local, you know, grassroots style charities very deliberately. And so even sporting organisations and things, grassroots, you know, like you know, where that funding is the significant difference to them. You know, we're not advertising in a big stadium somewhere on TV, or we've long gone with TV advertising, that sort of thing. So that's what we believe in, grassroots community spirit. And we have team members that just relish and love that. And I love taking my children to those opportunities and letting them understand and see what that's like. For example, we sponsor the Special Children's Christmas Party, which is a Christmas event for ACT people that are living with disabilities and for their families. And so it's sort of like a special Christmas party for children with disabilities. But we go and volunteer and inflate balloons and have our mascot there, and just the joy, and everyone donates presents, and everyone goes into this big room. All the children go into this big room. They get to bring home a big present. They don't know what it's going to be, but it's all age, and you know, it's all appropriate for them. And it's the personal reward and fulfillment you feel from giving to others as opposed to taking is just so significant, and I think is completely underrated. And so we always enjoy giving our team members access to those. We used to sponsor a helicopter, and they used to be able to go out and get inside the helicopter and check it out like a rescue helicopter. You know, all those sorts of experiences, the fun runs and walks, just getting amongst it. They love it. And I think if we have access to those opportunities and that community grassroots advocacy, that both enriches their personal lives, it strengthens the pharmacy message around what we're trying to achieve as a pharmacy group and the community pharmacy just of ourselves. And all the while, our team members have an extra layer of, I suppose, loyalty to us, because they see firsthand what we're trying to do, and that we're actually in it for the right reasons, and we give back just as much as we receive.
Oh, outstanding. And I can tell you, as a community member in Canberra and being involved in charities is very much appreciated. So last one, Elise, if a pharmacy they're logged in here, they're listening, they're not doing much in this space at all, but they're inspired by what you're talking about, the outcomes that it can have, the for want of a better phrase, because I agree with you, retention is not a great word, but you know, the impact it can have on retention, the strengthening of their standing in the community, and they think we should do more of this stuff, but we're not doing much of it at all now. What sort of things should they focus on to get some quick wins and get going in this space?
Yeah, I say ask your team. If you want your team to buy into something, they have to want to do it as well. So sit down with them, take them out to dinner, say, you know, what excites you, what makes you want to come to work tomorrow, what part of your job do you love, what part of your job would you prefer to do less of, and sort of start there. And you might find that someone has a particular passion for a health service that you weren't aware of, or they really want to develop their skills in a particular area, and you can support and foster that. And that's a start, you know, someone having enthusiasm and passion for something. Maybe you have something for years that you've been trying to get up off the ground and you just haven't had the time and space in the pandemic to make that happen. And so you deliberately give yourself 2 hours, you know, in the next week to make that happen, protected time where it allows you to think a bit differently about your pharmacy and not be, you know, and think a bit bigger picture, and put some steps in place, or, you know, contact 2 people to maybe get that plan underway or what have you. Attend a conference. They're fantastic for inspiring you, and they give you lots of good ideas, and they connect you with all the right people and make sure that you can meet them face to face. Any of those things sort of are an easy sort of kickstart opportunity, I suppose. And these days, the conferences have all, you know, restarted again face to face, so you're most definitely able to do all sorts of exciting things again. So now that things have loosened a bit, so that's a nice opportunity too. And just reach out. Pharmacists are friendly people. Pharmacy owners, the guild members, we all want the best for all the pharmacies in Australia, because they do such important work in their communities wherever they may be. So there is no problem in emailing a fellow pharmacy owner. There is no problem in reaching out on a Facebook page or whatever and saying, tell me more about this. I think we are all just trying to do our best in tricky circumstances. We all have very good intentions, and we're all very happy to share. So I think there shouldn't be any barrier to reaching out if you need to.
Outstanding as always, Elise. Thank you. And once again, thank you to all the presenters. Some fantastic insights, and we are very appreciative of them all giving up their time, particularly after hours, to share their insights and experiences and their advice with us all. And a reminder that a recording of this session will be available shortly on the Guild's YouTube channel. And if that's not enough content for you, please check out our PBCN podcast, because it has more than I think it's about 108, 109 episodes waiting for you to listen to. And the podcast is full of amazing stories like you've heard tonight from community pharmacies and even industry experts right across the country. So lots of diverse views, and it's all about helping you not only understand more about the world of pharmacy and business management, but also the patients that you meet and care for throughout your pharmacy career. So if you're interested, just head to guild.org.au/podcast or search for PBCN wherever you listen to your podcast, in your favorite podcast app. So that's a wrap for this webinar. Thank you once again, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening. Good night.